In the latest 4 Ways video from Richard Raffin, Tomislav Tomasic, Mike Peace, and Sam Angelo, they did a handled bowl, and I was really taken with the bowl that Tomislav did with his handles, and I thought I would try to do something similar with the LatheEngraver and just show you the steps that I would work through to do this. I have a bowl that I turned probably about a year ago. This is American elm, not my favorite thing to work with. And I just don't really like this bowl too much. It's a little thicker than I wanted, so it's about 10 millimeters thick. And I thought this would be just a good test piece for this. So the first thing that I've done is I've decided sort of what the maximum size of the handle I want is. So I've measured this out and I've put a mark on this. So this is about 40 millimeters is from the rim down to this line here. And then what I've done is I've just marked off the center of that point. So at 20 millimeters, I've marked that off, and that's going to be the center of my design. And what I need to do in this case is I need to get the diameter of this. So I always just use a pair of large calipers after I've made this line. I can touch off the line on both sides and then bring up a ruler and measure what that distance is on the calipers. And I've done that in this case, and it's 237 millimeters. So that's the measurement we're working with, 237 millimeters diameter, and we have 40 millimeters of space that we're working with there. And with that, we can go make a design on the computer. Now, I didn't record the entire process of me making this design, so I'm just going to show you the steps that I used and show you some of the important considerations along the way and ways to think about this. But I'll show you the end design that I came up with after I go through those steps. The first thing that we need to do is we need to determine the circumference around that spot on the bowl that we had. So we said that that was 237 millimeters. We need to multiply that by pi, and that gives us the circumference of our bowl, so 744.56. And then the first thing that I'm going to do, I have Inkscape opened up here, is I'm going to make a rectangle in Inkscape, and I'm going to give this the diameter of my design, sort of the entire properties of my design. So we said the width was going to be 40 millimeters, and the circumference around this was 744.56. So if I zoom out here, that's the entire size of my bowl in this case. But the thing is, we don't necessarily need to design into that entire thing. So what I'll do is I'll copy and paste this. And then what I can do is I can just divide this by 2, because we're going to have symmetry in this. So this is now half of the design here. And in fact, we don't even need to do that, because if we have symmetry in the handle itself, we can copy and paste this again and then divide that by 2. That's a quarter of our design. And then we can do any necessary symmetry operations within this. And I think that that'll be clear when I bring up the design and you see what I've come up with here. All right, so over here on the left is the design that I've come up with. So this is my full length, this is my half, and this is my quarter length. And the design that I've made fits within that quarter length. And I can zoom in on this. And so what I can actually do is I can delete this, for example. This is a single curve that I have here. I can copy this, I can paste it, I can switch it vertically here. And if I have snapping on, I can easily just snap that together, and that's one of my handles that I have. Now for the central design, all I did, the idea is you put your 3 fingers through that, is that I made 3 ovals, and I kind of just placed them with the central oval right in the middle here, and then kind of just more or less by eye just place the other 2 ovals, and then you can just do a path union operation to make that design in the middle. Now there's a couple things that you do have to do here. So this is now, we have one path here. I'm going to delete my rectangle for a moment so you can see this. We've got one path here and another path here. We like that to be a single path, so we can use a combine operation. So if we go to path and combine these, that now becomes a single path. The one thing that we have to worry about is that there are actually 2 nodes right there where it's joined up. So if we go to our node tool here, and if we zoom in, it may have automatically done that. But if we select both of the nodes there that are overlapping and we click this join button, that'll make sure that we have we've joined up those nodes properly. Now, what we can do is, because this is half of our design, we need to make the full length design. So we have that selected already. We'll select our central portion. We'll do a copy and then a paste, and we'll line those up there and take a look at this. Try to get them a little bit closer there. We have that right on the bounding box now. Now we can select both of our outlines here. Go to our node tool and make sure that these, you can see here, there's definitely two nodes. Select both of those nodes and join those nodes together. And so this should be our complete distance of this. We're just a little bit shy of where we need to be. We're at 743. So we'll tack on our 1 additional millimeter there, and we'll go ahead and set this to exactly 40 millimeters. All right, and that should be good. So I can delete all of these other things and then save this file. Now, the last thing that we need to do here is generate our tool paths. We have to make one more alteration for this, depending on what software we're going to use for those tool paths. I'm going to be using Kirimoto. So the one thing that we need to do in that is we need to select our line here, because this is an open path at this point, and Kirimoto doesn't really know what to do with open paths. So we select that open path, we go to path, and we click stroked path, and now save this file again. And that will make it so that Kirimoto will essentially see this as a very, very thin closed path. So we're going to go to the website now. So here's Kirimoto. I have videos on how to set this up for the LatheEngraver, but the first thing we're going to do is import our design. So our complete handles here, and we have to determine the depth of our cut that we're going to have. The bowl itself is about 10 millimeters, and I want to go a little bit past that because all of these are going to be cut throughs. So I'm going to set that at 12 millimeters. And we can click convert here. And you can see what we end up with is, here's our thin line that's we're going to cut around the circumference. And here's our central spots that we're going to cut. We're going to do two different operations in this case. The first operation that we're going to do is a trace operation in which we're going to follow the outline. So we're going to set this to none. Our step down is 3 millimeters, so there'll be 4 passes for this. Feed rate 700, plunge is 500. And the first thing that we need to do is select where we're going to do this. And we really want this to be the outline. And there it is. We can select this outline, and that should be all we need to do. So if we go to preview here, you can see here's are the tool paths that it's going to follow. One thing that I might do as I'm looking at this, because those 3 millimeter cuts are a little bit aggressive, I'm going to turn this ease down on. So what that will do now is that it'll ease those cuts in. It'll make it just a little bit cleaner as it's coming in at all those entry positions. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do is set up our next operation, which is going to be to do these internal things. And so we're going to do another trace operation. So I'll click trace here, but this case we're going to change this and we're going to make this a clear operation. The only thing that the reason why I do this as a clear operation as opposed to a follow is that if we're cutting around the outline of this, we're going to have a chunk in the middle that has the potential to grab the tool and pull it out. So rather than do that, I'm going to just clear out, essentially pocket this design. So we're going to select this here, and it is sometimes difficult to get the proper selection. I have that blue highlighted. I'm going to hold Control and press the left click button, and that's going to select that entire pocketed region. And I'll do the same thing up here. So select something internal at the bottom, hit Control and select that. And now, It did not clear. Ah, yes. It did not clear because we have to check this ignore part. I forgot about that. That's a new feature in Kirimoto. So now if we do this, you can see that it's clearing out those pockets. And with Kirimoto, you can always do a preview in this animate, and this will show you kind of what's going to happen for your cuts. So we can watch that go and even speed it up a little bit. Here it's doing our multiple passes, cut around the outline. And now it'll do the clearing of the central portion. And that looks like it should be good. I'll go ahead and stop that. And the last thing that we need to do is we will export this G-code. So can save this, and typically I save this to my downloads folder. Now, as always, the first thing we do with the LatheEngraver once we power it on is we set the B-axis or the tool parallel with the Z-axis and set everything to 0. So I've made sure that the B-axis is at 0, and at this case, all the other axes are set to 0, as you can see right here. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is we need to upload our file to the templates directory. So we'll go to templates here, and we're going to upload our complete handles G-code that we had before. So that's now been uploaded to this. And we'll go to our G-code templates, refresh the files to make sure this is there. And then we need to now input our starting diameter, which was 237. We don't need to make any rotation adjustments or scale adjustments here. We just need to now select our file. So here's our handles, and we're going to turn this flat pockets off. Everything else will keep as it is here. And what this is going to do is it's going to take all those y-axis movements that are in that G-code file, and it's going to convert those to a-axis rotations based on our diameter. All right, so we click Write G-code, and it tells us that the G-code's being written. And if we go down, we have to go back to the main level. And here now is our diameter 237, rotation 0, our origins at the center, and this is our G-code file. So now we will go back to our control view here, and what we're going to do is we're going to set the position. So I'm going to start by rotating the B-axis because I know that this is going to have to rotate, and ultimately what we're looking to do is we're looking to put that B-axis perpendicular to the bowl at the position of our central line. So I'm going to move this here a bit. I have to look over the top of this in order to see this, but I'll go to perhaps the other camera view here. Move this a little bit. You can kind of see what I'm doing. I can tell I'm going to have to move that B a fair bit more. Pretty good. Now, one of the things that I do want to do is I want to set the 0 position at the spot on the bulb, because this was turned quite a while ago. It's not fully round, but I want to make sure that I cut all the way through at all the positions. So one thing I can do is I can just kind of rotate this around a bit and see what the lowest spot is. This is not auto-focusing. Sorry, I didn't realize that. I'm going to rotate this around until I find the spot that is furthest away, and then I will set that at that point at 0. The difference is not very much here. Okay, I think that this will be an okay 0 spot. Now, the only other consideration that we have is where is the 0? So if we want to place the handles at very specific positions, we would need to set that to being the 0 spot. So I'm setting X, Z, and A to 0 here. And what I mean by that is if we go back and we look at our design in this case, the 0 spot is going to be right at the center. So that means that this is going to not be a handle part, and that there'll be a handle part that's effectively 90 degrees away, which is going to be somewhere in here. The grain's not well matched in this bowl, so I'm not really worrying too much about where I put these, but that is one thing that you can consider in this case. All right, so I think that is reasonable. I have my router speed turned up fairly high here because I'm making relatively deep cuts, and we will see what happens. So I'm gonna go back to LatheEngraver here. I'm gonna get my ear protection, and we'll fire it up and just see what happens. All right, that's the end of that run. That took 11 minutes and 35 seconds from when we started. A few things that I probably do differently. They're a little bit big. I would probably make these a little smaller. I don't quite know how. I might also make the cutouts smaller. I like the oval to be able to fit the fingers in there, but I don't actually need all of the extra space, I think. It's not too bad. One thing that you can't really tell in this camera view, let me move this other camera over. Here is that the way that the rim was actually shaped, that it actually has some shape to that there, and I think that looks nice. I think I'll probably come back in and sand over to follow sort of that cutout that's there, or maybe even just put it back on the lathe and do some light cuts across there to make that happen. Yeah, overall, I think that worked out pretty well for just kind of a simple attempt. And I think you can see that there's the potential to do a lot of neat things with this.